Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic today, something I like. Let's do it. Late night hikers of Reddit. What's the creepiest thing you've seen out there in the dark? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
I go hiking in the woods that permeate my town, sometimes so late that I get to see the sunrise out there. The strangest thing I ever saw was what I could only describe as a shanty town built up seemingly overnight deep into the woods. Simple little hovels made of scrap metal and bed sheets and a small fire pit that someone had made out of an old tire. With the fire still burning, but that wasn't the weird part. The weird part was that this was well past midnight when I found the place, and it was quiet as a grave. There was no one there. Someone made the trouble of getting a fire going and then left it. From the look of it, this place could hold about a dozen or so people, and yet there was nothing there but the fire they abandoned and whatever possessions they had left in the shanties. Usually it's what I hear, large fallen branches snapping just out of sight of my headlamp, or waking up an hour later and hearing steps and leaves rustling, but being too exhausted and fearful to inspect or want to know, probably nothing important anyway. One time I returned to my car after a late night hike with friends, and my SUV was covered in foot, hand, paw prints. They were just so large and even dragged a little in the dust. It was on or near a large military base in the mountains. I think some local enlisted may have made their way to scare us, but it was just so well done. Pretty scary for all of us because it's what you'd imagine the Blair Witch would do. No animal did it. I used to often spend my summers bouldering with my friends by a relatively large forest that was about an hour and a half away from where I used to live. We used to spend some of the nights camping out there just to save some travel cost and time. Anyway, I think this was roughly like the third or fourth time we were out there camping. My friend had left all her climbing gear and her rucksack just outside her tent, or we definitely think she did anyway. The next morning, we found her boots, a few clothes, and all her chalk powder had disappeared. We figured that it could have been completely feasible that she misplaced it, although we were quite sure that they were next to her tent, and we didn't really want to believe that they were stolen. Anyway, we didn't read too much into this and just stupidly said to ourselves that perhaps she had left it by the boulders and some animal took an interest in it. I know it sounds stupid, but it was very reasonable to us at the time. Anyway, fast forward a year and we're at the same spot as usual, sitting by the tents and chilling after having some food. Mind you, it's pitch black out, and only the camp area is lit by the fire. I go somewhere a bit out of sight for a slash, and what do I see? A dude in a full-on ghillie suit, lying on his stomach, looking right toward our campsite. I kinda stood there frozen as this dude clocked that I had seen him, and he just bolted out of there. I don't know whether the event of the years prior were related to the ghillie guy, but this definitely has stuck to all of us. We haven't been back there since, which is a damn shame. Years ago, before we got married, my wife and I went to a local state park with a picnic and a hammock. We set up the hammock in the woods, enjoyed our picnic, then fell asleep together in the hammock. I was abruptly awakened by my wife. She mentioned for me to be quiet. The sun had set. There was still a hint of light in the sky, but we couldn't see anything meaningful in the woods. My wife beckoned me to listen. Complete silence. Then the snap of a branch in the distance. More silence. We were both suddenly very on edge. We whispered to one another, trying to figure out if someone was sneaking up on us. The silence was broken again in another branch. Same direction but closer. Then from another direction, a momentary crunch of leaves. Now we're terrified. We both had pocket knives on us, small but better than nothing. We also had a flashlight. We drew our knives and deliberated whether whatever was out there knew our location. We decided to keep the light off, lest we give away our exact location. Maybe we could run for the car. More steps in rapid succession. coming directly toward us. Then, silence. Again. My wife had enough. "We know you fuckers are out there," she yelled. Silence for an eternity, and then another crunch of leaves. We had enough. We prepared ourselves as best we could for a fight, then shined the flashlight into the darkness toward the last noise we had heard. 3 deer scampered away into the darkness. We sheepishly gathered our things and left without incident. I had a group of friends who used to get together and play manhunt in a local park at night. Just a different way of saying a big game of hide-and-seek tag, where 3 people start off it, and everyone else goes and hides in the park. As they find and tag people, they become it as well, until eventually there are only 1 to 3 people left. Then we start again, and play into the early morning. Well, one night, I was out with my friend and his younger brother. We were heading to the middle of the park to a hot spot for hiding places. There's a long stairwell that leads up a huge hill to a pavilion and field. We were slowly walking down those stairs, maybe halfway down, when we noticed 2 folk way below us. Thinking it was one of our friends, we yell out, "Hey, who's that?" Instead of the normal reaction, which is to call out your name and then sprint away, trying to avoid getting tagged, a strange voice responds, "Who the f*** are you?" We at first started sprinting down at them, like we normally would, but then we realized they too were sprinting at us. We don't even hesitate. We turn around and sprint up the stairs as fast as we can. Adrenaline kicking in, hairs sticking up on the back of my neck. We make it up to the top of the hill and pause when I look back, and they are right behind us, not more than 10 feet away, which is absurdly fast because of how much distance we had between us. We lose our shit and start sprinting as fast as possible to the park trail that wraps around the entire park and leads to a road where one of our friends lives, and that we use as a meetup spot between games. It's a 2-mile run back from where we are, so we book it, sprinting as if our lives depended on it, occasionally looking back and seeing the 2 people following behind. As we get nearer, our energy is spent, but we push on and make it to the street. Looking back, and there's no sign of the 2 strangers. All of our group was back at the house, lounging on the driveway, having decided to prank us that night. And while we were off in the park searching for them, they would meet back at the home until we gave up. We shared our story with them, and some laughed in disbelief. Others wanted to search the park for those 2 randoms, but we never discovered who they were. All I know is that they were incredibly fast and shady as One night, my friend and I decided to hike to the top of this small mountain at night for a meteor shower. There were 4 of us, all around 16 at the time, and we thought it would be cool. We drove over and started hiking. We took a break about halfway when we noticed that there was a guy following us. In a business suit? We were weirded out, so we decided to start back up and walk a bit faster. But by the next time we stopped, he was like 10 feet away. So we bit the bullet to see if he had just walked by. He didn't. He stopped and asked if we were there for the meteor shower and if he could walk with us. Weird, a 30-something-year-old man in a suit wanting to hike with 4 16-year-olds, but whatever. As we were walking, my friend and I noticed that he was walking really close to our friend, the only girl in the group, like you could smell her shampoo up close. We got to the top, sat down, and he sat down almost right up on our friend. With her reasonably freaked out, I made an excuse for why we had to leave early, and we promptly booked it out of there, nearly running the entire way down. When we got back to the car, we thought, cool, we ditched the weirdo, but no. When we were all in the car, my friend pointed out that the guy was full-on sprinting down the trail toward our car with a large stick. Being in a car, we just drove out of there very shook up. We chalked it up to some dude on some hell of a drug, but 2 days later, we all got a text linking us to a news report about a guy that had strangled his wife, then proceeded to kill another girl later that night on a hiking trail. It was the guy. The same dude at the same hiking trail. We never told our parents about the incident and never went back there. Ever. A few friends and I went on an overnight hike in the Rockies, behind our little town a few years back when I was in high school. Our campsite was pretty far up there and it was getting dark. The spot we were at was nestled in a grove of trees, secluded from the wind and elements, so we decided to stop there for the night. The four of us built a little fire and ate dinner, then just talked for a few hours. Then all of a sudden, my friend leaps forward and douses the fire with our emergency water, plunging us into complete darkness. Needless to say, the rest of us were pretty pissed, as there was no reason for him to do this. He quickly shushed us, and we realized he's absolutely terrified, like so scared he couldn't even speak or move. The rest of us managed to get a few words out of him, and he tells us to look up on the ridge where we should have been camping. It was pretty far up, so it was kind of hard to see at first, but that sight will haunt me for the rest of my life. There was a fire, a big one, like a bonfire sort of thing. Around the fire were several figures moving in a slow circle. They were humanoid, but not quite, and they had arms and legs like people, but something just seemed different about them that I couldn't really explain. Almost like the limbs were too long and skinny or something, but maybe not. Anyway, these figures just moved around the fire in a really slow circle over and over again. My one friend claims he could hear them singing something, but I don't remember anything. Importantly, there was one standing off to the side a little ways, leaning with his arm on a tree branch above his head. It really creeped us out, but we were able to sleep it off. We figured it was a scout troop having a camp or something. Morning came, and we finished off our hike to the peak, and on our way down, we passed the place, we saw the figure, and decided to check out the camp. It was completely deserted. It was obvious that there had been a fire, and there were footprints everywhere. Inside the fire pit was a small mound of charred animal bones, probably chipmunk, and a pile of 4 or 5 rodent skulls that had been burned. Creepy, right? Then we look over at what were the one figure was standing. Blood. Not a lot, but enough to be of concern, or anything but enough to be creepy. Then we see the tree branch he was casually leaning against. It was well over any of our heads, and I'm over 6 feet. That would mean that in order for the figure to lean against it like he was, he would need to be at least 7 feet tall. Needless to say, we got off that mountain very fast, and I've never been up there again. We called the Fish and Wildlife Rangers and told them what we saw. They said it was probably just a bunch of kids messing around and not to worry about it. It might have been just that, and we let our imaginations run wild. But all 4 of us swear to this day we all saw the same thing, and it didn't look like a bunch of kids in the dark. I don't believe in ghosts or the supernatural, but those mountains still scare the shit out of me, and I will never go back there again.
Now, someone who spent a lot of time in the woods at all hours of the day and night, primarily early mornings, so I don't get too many late nights. There have been some where I was pushing way past sunset, and it's not so much that I think that there's, a creepy guy in a hockey mask waiting to kill me, but you definitely become that base survival instinct kicks in late at night, and I'll grab a rock and put it in my vest and grab a stick as a makeshift weapon. You're hyper aware, and I think some of these stories could probably be attributed to that. So again, I enjoy this very much, and I love the woods, and I hope all of us can go out there. And yes, are there axe murderers in the woods somewhere on Earth? Probably, but mostly it's just animals.
This happened to me a few years ago. I used to go to the school at the University of California, Santa Cruz. I'm a runner, and the campus is a beautiful redwood forest, so I would run on the trails. One day I left a little later than usual on a run through one of the more isolated trails. Here's where it gets weird. I was about 15 minutes running deep into the woods, and still hadn't seen anyone else around. Suddenly up ahead, I saw what appeared to be a homeless man in a ragged clothing walking on the trail. Now, he was walking further into the woods, and this path went very, very far, and the sun was setting, aka this man was spending the night in the woods. I wanted to reach my usual running checkpoint before turning back, so I decided to keep my distance and run by. As soon as I passed the man, he called out to me, What came first, light or sound? In my head I was like, what the this guy's nuts. But I decided to humor him and yelled out light without looking back. He said, well, I think it's sound, but who knows? And started mumbling to himself. I continued on. I reached my goal and started to head back. It was really dark now, and I was feeling sketched out that I had to pass this guy again to get back. He seemed pretty crazy and potentially dangerous, but I didn't have a choice. I got past the point where I first passed him, but he was nowhere to be seen. There weren't any other branches of the trail, and if he had headed back, I would have seen him by then. He must have gone off the trail. Suddenly a girl from up on the hill screamed for me to stop. I stopped and looked up on the hill, but it was too dark to see anything. I was freaked out. I called out to ask if she was alright and eventually saw her climbing down. The hill was really steep, so she put in a lot of effort to get up there and away from whatever was after her. She said that she was on a run when a scary homeless guy started harassing her, and he chased her up the hill, but she didn't know where he went. She was going to spend the night there until I came along because she was too scared to go back down. At this point, we both wanted to get the hell out of there. Who knew if this was the creepy man was, like, lurking around, watching us from the dark. So we ran back together and made it to the road. She thanked me and we parted ways. Never ran back on that trail again. Santa Cruz can be a pretty weird place. I've heard legends of students flunking out of school there and then just living in the forest. Maybe this guy was a student from years past. My girlfriend and I had driven down an old dirt road that ran beside a lake on one side with mountains on the other. We were looking for unexplored territory to hike in. The dirt road became a trail and eventually was swallowed up entirely by the forest. Once the path became passable by car, we got out and hiked for quite some time and began making our way back to the car as the sun was going down. It was a challenge getting the car turned around, but I finally managed and we were off. It was slow going as it was a shitty road and getting dark fast. Suddenly, we came to a fork in the path that hadn't been visible coming the other way. Neither of us had any idea whether to go right or left, so I just picked randomly, hoping that both would end up taking us back to the main road. As we rounded a small curve in the road, our headlights fell upon a man dragging a large hockey duffel bag off the trail into the woods. As soon as the light hit him, he just froze completely still. Driving past him felt like an eternity because we couldn't have been doing more than 5 miles an hour due to the shitty road. My girlfriend and I didn't say a word to each other until we were well past him, at which point we were like, what the f*** was that? And then the road ended. Just like where we had stopped the first time, the forest had swallowed up this part of the road. We were going to have to turn around and drive by the man with the human-sized duffel bag again. I told my girlfriend to buckle up and hold on tight because at the first sign of trouble, I was going to gun it. We came to the spot where the man was, and he was nowhere to be seen. We eventually made it to the right path and get out of there. The weirdest thing about it was that there wasn't a vehicle anywhere near this guy for 50 miles in either direction. We would have seen it if there had been. We'd traveled as far as possible both ways, and there just wasn't any place to pull off of the road. How the hell did he get there? Where was he going? What was in the bag? I was walking through the woods after fishing for the better part of the day. I decided to stay out of the reel late and try to fish up some bullheads for a local watering hole. I was only about 13 and stayed out way later than I normally would. Usually I would take a trail home, but decided to cut through some thicker brush to get to my grandparents' house so I could call my mom. I knew she'd probably be freaking out a bit, even though this happened from time to time. There was an abandoned graveyard on my route. I don't remember what the story was about, but I knew that it was there. I had wandered past it before, never really checked it out. It's all overgrown and wild. I knew that if I followed the outskirts of the graveyard, I'd hit the road and be home free. The day had been pretty chilly overall for a late spring day, but I swear, in my teenage brain, it was getting colder. I remember looking at my breath and thinking it was weird how cold it had gotten. It was overall a pretty bright night near full moon, but in the woods, it was hard to see. The graveyard was wide open with no trees. It was well lit. As I was walking up, I noticed that the ground was covered in a thin layer of fog. I remember looking into the graveyard and not really registering what I saw at first. It was a person, which at first didn't seem odd, so I kept quiet and walked into the woods a bit, more so I didn't get spotted. I didn't know who it was, so I wanted to keep clear. I stepped behind some trees and lost sight of them for a moment, and when I came back around the trees, they were gone. Weird, because I was behind the tree for maybe a few seconds tops. I didn't hear anything either. I walked a bit further, keeping an eye out. I was a bit creeped out. Near the graveyard was a run-down barn. I'm not really sure, but as I got closer to it, I could see that someone was inside. I got a good look, and it was a woman, probably in her 50s. The way the moonlight hit her made her look incredibly pale. She seemed to be digging, but I didn't hear anything. No sounds of a shovel or her making noise in any way. I was maybe 30 feet away. I could see she stopped and disappeared behind some debris. I decided to get the heck out of there and quickly moved to get out of the road. I tried to keep track of her, looking for where she went, but I couldn't find her. It was like she literally disappeared. I kept trucking and came out to the road. The fog was pretty much covering the road, a small country road, fields on one side, woods on the other. As I walked down the road, she would randomly appear behind and in front of me, and I started hiding and basically playing cat and mouse. Each time I saw her, she was hard to see, only in the moonlight, and stuck to the remnants of some of the old houses nearby. She always looked pale, never made any noise. Once I got past that part of the road, which had a number of barn foundations and home remnants, I never saw her again, and it instantly started getting warmer. Creeped me the heck out, and I never went that way again. I don't know who or what that was, but I told my uncle about it, and he went and checked it out, thinking maybe someone was trying to excavate the graves. He said there wasn't anything messed with. They thought I was lying. It still gives me the shakes just typing this out. I know it was most likely someone wandering around looking for stuff or checking the place out. But what teenage me remembers didn't seem natural. It was also weirder that she never made the noise. She also seemed to be able to just appear and move around me. At one point, she was right behind me, and I swear, a moment later, she was in front of me. Oh, god damn it. I forgot the one that actually made me fall down clutching my heart. I was camping and some of the group had gone off on a late night stroll. After a while, I and a friend got bored and decided to go look for them. It was pretty much rolling grassland hills with few trees out there, so we figured it wouldn't be hard. It was also unearthly quiet, other than the occasional distant owl or coyote sounds, so we were whispering and being very chill. There was a pretty good moon, so we hadn't brought lights either. Anyway, I finally see someone standing under a tree on the crest of this hill, so I go up there first. I call out quietly, and don't get a response. Again, no response. Kind of annoyed, I just strut up there, but I'm realizing something looks weird about this person I've been seeing. They're holding their arms over their heads, and the proportions aren't right. But I think that was all kind of subconscious because I didn't do anything different until I got close enough to see that it wasn't a person at all, but a coyote that someone had flayed and strung up to the tree by the limbs like some kind of totem. I literally fell backwards in shock. Turns out, the woman who owned the property was no fan of coyotes coming after her livestock. She also woke us all up in the middle of the night, once with sustained AR-15 fire, like 20 shots. Someone who lived near there just said, "Oh, she must have found a whole pack of them. go back to sleep. About a year ago, I was taking a walk at a local nature park. It's rather big, right alongside a big inlet river. I tend to cycle up there as there are plenty of drops and jumps for me to do on my mountain bike, but this one day or night was just a bit weird. You know when you can just feel something in the air? I was going about my business as usual and realized it was getting pretty late, like not dark, but the light was beginning to fade. Not many people were there that day, but all day I just felt like I was being watched. I lined up a drop, which runs next to a set of stairs, quite a long one. Right as I hit the drop, I hear this almighty fucking squawk, really throaty, a bit of a roar, combined with like a bird, I guess. My handlebars wobbled a little bit, but I managed to get to the bottom without falling. I slam on my brakes and look up at the drop behind me, and there was this figure, human-like, just standing at the top. He was wearing denim jeans with this fucking weird, almost pagan-esque robe garment, which had like feathers on it, all tattered and stuff. And he just looked at me deadpan, no expression, and after about 10 seconds just let out this fucking noise again, really loud, eyes stretched out. I shipped my pants and began to cycle out. Now it's about a 10-minute ride of windy paths going over little wooden bridges, covering small rivers and runs, and I swear to God, this noise happened like 4 more times, each a little closer. And to top it off, there was nobody around. Like normally you get couples walking through or older folk with their dogs, but nobody, nothing. I've been back twice since, and each time I just cannot get comfortable enough to stick around and enjoy myself like I used to. One day I think I'll grab a bunch of my pals from hockey and go exploring to see if we can figure that shit out. Not intending to mock any religion or beliefs, and I really don't know which group this would be credited to anyway. Wiccans, Druids, just a psycho. Anyway, I was hiking through a part of central Florida about 3 years ago. Kind of dense scrub brush. You can only see the trail in front of you. Brush is chest high on both sides. I'm about 2 miles from the nearest trailhead and it's about 7 p.m. I had an hour of light left. I had intended on setting up camp when I found the next clearing. The first clearing I get to had a gator head in the middle of its circle of stones around it. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks old. Just a dried skull with scales. Soft tissue was gone. I had seen gator skulls left by poachers before, and I usually ignore them. But it gave me a weird vibe, so I kept walking. About 15 minutes later, and deeper in, I get to another nice-sized clearing. This time, a few dead birds were strung up to some sticks and hanging in a circle, like a mobile, over a baby crib. 7 or 8 small birds, maybe 4 feet across, had been there for a while. It didn't smell anymore, at least. Still creepy enough to send me on my way. 3rd time's the charm, right? Wrong. 20 minutes later, and after taking side paths to get away from the main trail and hopefully avoid any other displays, I find a fresh one. A deer head on a stick, with sticks scattered around, maybe 4 circles around the base of the stick. The blood was splattered all around the sticks, fresh enough for the flies to still be on it. The head smelled rancid. I didn't see the body, but I didn't look for it either. I got out of there. It was dark before I got back to my truck. Called Fish and Game the next morning because the gator and deer would have been taken out of season. I told them what I found, and apparently this wasn't the first time somebody called about animal effigies in that park. I never went back, and I'm curious just how many other shrines were out there. I didn't actually see anything, and I'm really glad I didn't. A friend and I have started walking a trail system that leads deep through some woods and fields by his house around dusk. During the day it's really peaceful and green and whatnot, but it was late, and it was getting dark fast. The area we live in has been flooding recently, and the trail is currently 2 feet underwater, about halfway through the loop. But my friend said we could walk to that point and then take a shortcut back to the beginning through one of those man-made pine forests, where the trees are all perfectly lined and spaced apart. We only had to go about 50 feet into the pines before the canopy made it pitch black all around us. But he knows the area, so we kept going. About 100 feet further in, we both hear a very distinctive squeaky door noise, like literally no chance of it being anything other than an old rusty hinge. He comes through here 20 times in the past few weeks while jogging during the day and confirms that he's never seen any type of building or anything with a door back here. We both decide that we'd rather just walk the trail back the way we came, in that deal with whatever horror movie shit was happening in there. I've never noped out of a situation faster than I did that.